Hey Raven, I was reminded of something that I found a long time ago that I wanted to share with you. We're close in age, so you might have some clues on this too. I can't remember the exact year or even month, unfortunately, when this took place, other than it was winter because I remember being home on a snow day. But this was back when I was in middle school, and the internet was full of weird and funny sites that you could surf through. You also may have heard of this, but this was also when the site StumbleUpon was a big thing. In case anyone doesn't know what that was, StumbleUpon was a site that would send you to random websites. It was like a big surprise me button for the whole internet. It was pretty amusing for me and my friends. We've come across some pretty mediocre and boring sites like a cheesy realtor site, but then it's also taken me to places that I was happy to find. It's how I found one of my favorite bands, actually. So in my free time and when I had access to the internet, I would press my luck on this website to amuse myself. I live in the Midwest, so snow days were pretty common for us. On this snow day, it was apparently colder than normal too, and my mom didn't want us to be outside, fearing that it would be too cold. So, while my siblings busied themselves playing together, I took our old and heavy laptop to my room and started playing on that. I started playing games at first, but when I got bored, I turned to StumbleUpon. I started shuffling through, not getting much in ways of entertaining places, until I found this one streaming site. I unfortunately don't remember what it was called. The background was black with white and yellow and orange accents. The front first asked for your age. I don't recommend ever doing this, but I lied and put that I was 18. Yes, I understand why that was a bad idea too. Upon entering the site, the front page had a featured stream. It looked like it was a random stream. Nothing looked too exciting about it. It was the back of two guys' heads, and they were hunched over on a couch, staring at a small TV, playing some old racing game. We're talking about some old school game streaming type deals. Nowadays, it definitely reminds me of a badly discounted Twitch TV. I watched them for a bit and then decided to look around the site more. Along the side, there was a list of a bunch of different genres, I believe. There were lists such as gaming, movies, talking, politics, acting, male, female, adult only, and so forth. My room was off the living room, so I wasn't going to try anything risky. But I did want to look at some of the other streams. I watched another gaming stream. I went to the girls section and saw one that was just 4 girls basically gossiping and bashing on their teachers and other people they went to school with. Pretty boring to me. And then I checked out the talking section. It listed out different ones in a grid that you could scroll through, but this site also showed you ones that weren't currently online. It would just show a black screen. I checked out a few until I came across one that I thought was offline. The title was called Night Shift, and the small thumbnail was not a black screen, but instead to be a camera pointing at a small desk. The light was off, so it was pretty dark, and there was no one at the desk. Without any movement, I figured it was offline, but it was still strange to me that it wasn't a black screen, so I clicked on it to see if there was something more to it. Going to the stream, I could see a bit more on the screen. The camera was pointed at the old desk. The chair had a jacket draped over the back. There was a small shelf on the back wall behind the desk that appeared to have a couple of books and VHS tapes on it. I couldn't make out the writing on the tapes, but they definitely appeared to be homemade, or at least home recordings. On the right wall, where the camera was more so facing, was a large map that appeared to have writing and circling on it. Again, I couldn't make out what was written because the camera was pretty crappy. At first, it looked like a pretty standard office to my young self. I just assumed that maybe someone left their camera or stream on by mistake, or maybe it was just a mood that was way too early for its time. based on how the cozy room with the lo-fi music is a popular thing nowadays. But something told me to keep watching, so I kept it up. I went to a different tab to keep doing what I was doing and would check back on that one every few moments. Then, as I was messing around, I heard a bang that made me jump. Then I realized that it came from my headset. I checked my tabs and realized it was coming from that night shift stream. The lighting had changed on the screen, where there was clearly a light on behind the camera, so I went back to giving it my full attention. I heard another bang that I believe was a door slamming shut, and then a man shouting at someone. I couldn't make out what he said because he wasn't in the room, but I could clearly tell that he sounded angry. I also only heard one voice, so I'm not sure if he was shouting at someone in another room, or maybe on a phone call. Then, the person I heard entered the room with the camera. I heard more shuffling and grunting, and then I jumped as they very dramatically dropped a box on the desk, bumping the camera, now pointing slightly up. The light was then turned back off, so it was back to only the soft glow. I'm not sure where it was coming from because it wasn't very bright. Then, someone pulled out the chair and sat in it. They were wearing a hoodie and a ball cap, as I could see the bill sticking out, but unfortunately that was all I could see. Their hood was up, so I couldn't see their face either. They sat at the desk and started pulling out papers from the box. These were single pages, many with words like it was part of a longer piece. Some were pages from a newspaper and some were photos. They didn't look to be in any order either, just loose pages. They were hunched over the desk, spending several seconds on each one. Sometimes they would pick up a marker, maybe a highlighter, and then mark on the page. But he continued pulling them out one by one. He would mark on some of them, put them behind the box. Others he would put on the shelf. And the ones he didn't mark at all he tore up or crumpled and then threw them over his shoulder. Sometimes he would mumble something, and occasionally he slammed his fist on the desk. I even heard him speak once after punching the desk. He shouted, "I know it's related!" It made me jump again. There was no music, no other sound other than the shuffling of papers and the squeaking of the marker. It was starting to feel more and more unsettling, but I could not stop watching. I wanted to know what I was looking at, what he was writing down, and what the purpose of all of this was. Unlike current-day Twitch, there was no chat option. There were no comment sections, it was just the videos, so I couldn't even ask them myself. All I could do was continue to watch. It had been over an hour since I started watching this stream based on the counter it had on the site. I don't know how full the box was because I couldn't see into it, but he had to have gone through a lot of it at this point. But after some time, he clasped his hands on the desk and put his head down. I could hear him whispering something, maybe praying. And then he finished, stood up, and looked at the map on the wall. He wrote a few things on it, and the only thing I remember was seeing him circle one part and draw an arrow to another part. Afterwards, he sat down and spun the chair around to face the camera, and this is where it creeped me out the most. He pulled his hood down so I could see his face just a little bit. He had some stubble on part of his face, but on the right, it also looked pretty badly scarred. Like what I now recognize as a possible burn scar. It went from his chin and crept up the right side of his face, on his cheek, and stopped right under his eye. I don't know how far back it went, since he was still wearing a baseball cap and it was dark, but what I could tell was that he was now looking straight into the camera. And the look itself made me squirm. It was a combination of the parent look, when they want you to fess up to something, and almost a predatory look. I know that he had no idea that I was specifically watching him, but it really felt like it. I even remember pointing the laptop slightly away from me, and I didn't even have a camera on it. After staring into my soul for what felt like forever, he finally spoke, but it just left me even more confused. he held up a picture of a girl that he pointed at the camera. It was of a young girl with long dark hair. There was nothing else significant that I can remember about her, though. Then he put the picture down and went back to staring at the camera. And all he said was, "I see you. I know you see me and all the work I've put into finding you, and now I know where you are. I'll be with you soon, I promise you that." Then he looked over the camera like something behind it and nodded. He started adjusting the camera like he was taking it off its holder, but I was too freaked out to see what happened next. I quickly closed the browser and shut off the computer. I know it seems silly now, but I was afraid that I was going to get into trouble. Like maybe they would find me, or for some reason, this had to do with me. So after staying off the computer for an hour or so, I opened it back up, deleted the history for the day, and then even cleared my cache. I know, once again, I know that seems silly, but back then as a kid and not knowing much about computers, I thought that would at least protect me. The days following that were completely normal, other than me feeling paranoid. No one strange called our house or showed up at the door looking for me, and there were no signs that I was in trouble by anyone. Life went on just as normal. I told one of my friends about it and he wanted to see it too, but since I had found it by chance, I didn't even know where to start. I didn't even know the name of the site, and I never found it again. Thinking back on it as an adult now, all I can really piece together is that the girl in the picture was either missing, and the guy was trying to find her, or maybe he was a stalker and she managed to get away. I have no idea if either of those theories are correct, though. So, that's my story of how I scared myself as a kid. I would be interested in finding that site again if it still exists. It's hard to find streaming services outside of the popular red and purple ones these days. I'd love to see if it was still around and maybe even try to find that one. But at the same time, I don't want to freak myself out again because just thinking of the way he stared into the camera, it gives me goosebumps all over again. Given the fact that the internet is still relatively young in the grand scheme of things in this world, I think we can look at its documented and known history and be in awe of the sheer number of crimes that have taken place on the internet. Internet-based black markets where you can literally purchase anything. Check out my last dark web video for some context. But it's not always something as straightforward as illegal purchases or people looking for victims. No, sometimes it's the internet itself that's coming after you. And I'm not talking about digital armies of keyboard warriors sucking down Red Bull in their basement, leaving incendiary posts meant to do nothing less than piss you off on the most fundamental level, as if the coding, the very essence of the internet, is attacking you personally. I am, of course, talking about computer viruses. And unlike in nature, where all plants and animals, including humans, are prone to spontaneous infections that our body will fight off naturally, in cyberspace, every single existing virus has been handcrafted, or hand-programmed maybe, to do nothing but spread malice across the World Wide Web. They steal your information, they turn entire server rooms into smoldering slag, usually all because you clicked on the wrong link or downloaded the wrong file, or visited one sketchy website too many. But sometimes, it requires even less of a mistake on the user's part, as the world learned in no uncertain terms back in March of 1999, with the spread of the Melissa virus, W97M.Melissa.A. On March 26, 1999, the virus made itself known to the world when it began spreading like an absolute digital wildfire. It quickly became one of the fastest spreading viruses ever, and one of the costliest outbreaks in the history of the digital realm. The virus was spreading using a combination of Microsoft Word documents and Outlook. Open the email, which came from a person you knew, whose email address you knew to be authentic, click on the attachment, and you're infected. From there, the virus would scan the first 50 names in the Outlook global address book and send itself to those 50 names. Once it infected another computer, it would do the same thing, replicating itself millions of times and constantly being sent en masse to other computers, other unsuspecting victims. Now, I'm sure there are no small numbers of listeners here that find the idea of clicking on an attachment in an email to, well, just be silly. But there are a few factors here that I want to remind everyone of. Back in 1999, the internet had been widely accessible to the layman public for less than a decade. There wasn't a whole lot of common knowledge about things like internet worms and computer viruses. Plus, most of these infectious emails were coming from people you knew, people in your address book. So in 1999, most people had very little reason to be suspicious of these emails. Although that common paranoia around unknown emails and such really are kind of the result of this incident. Always remember that on Monday morning, everyone is the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Now, I'm sure everyone here is curious about just where this virus originated from. What was the point of the first infection? Well, I'm sure it'll come as zero surprise to absolutely anyone that, as with all good internet stories, this one begins with a porn website. Yes, just as the brothels and other dens of depravity are often the ground zero for public health crises, such are their digital doppelgangers. The adult content sites often ground zero for internet virus outbreaks. From one content site, it spread to another, and then again, to no one's surprise, it found its way into a corporate email server, and then it just went gangbusters. The Outlook mail system was bogged down to a crawl by the countless numbers of emails being generated and sent on a near-constant basis. Microsoft and Intel Corporation were both hit hard by the virus, as was the computer systems of the United States Marine Corps. Reports came in from over 250 organizations, with reports that over 100,000 computers were infected with this virus, although it is suspected that the number was considerably higher. Over 1 million email accounts were hijacked by the virus, and it took days to contain the infection, and much, much longer to remove the virus fully from the infected networks. During the following investigation into the outbreak of the so-called Melissa virus, which was reference to a fictional stripper, the unique method of delivery was actually the very thing that allowed authorities to trace the origins of the virus back to the very man who had written it. The suspect went by the alias Quidjabo, this being a reference, of course, to the episode of The Simpsons called Bart the Genius from Season 1, and another reference to this was also written into the virus itself. Not only did the virus spread itself the second someone clicked on the document attached, but when the minutes of the day matched the date of the virus, it would send out a second round of infectious emails with the attached message. 22 points plus triple word score plus 50 points for using all my tiles, I'm out of here, man. Again, a direct reference to Simpsons Season 1, Episode 2, Bart the Genius. How it all began was when Quidjabo used a hacked AOL account to upload a packet to an adult news group called AltSex. And it was from here that the virus would spread all across the world. Headway in the location and identification of Quidjabo was made when authorities analyzed the infected Word documents and compared their unique global identifier numbers to other documents with the same identifier. Ultimately, the trail led them back to one David L. Smith, the macro virus writer for Vicodin S and Alt F11. On April 1st of 1999, police in New Jersey arrested Smith after a tip-off from AOL, and in a collaborative effort between New Jersey State Police and the FBI, among others. He stood accused of causing over $80 million in damages by disrupting personal computers and computer networks of businesses and government agencies. Before the end of the millennium on December 10th, Smith would plead guilty to second-degree charge of computer theft and a federal charge of damaging a computer program by releasing a virus. His total sentence was 20 months in prison and a fine of $5,000. Kind of a light charge for causing so much damage, but I guess at the end of the day, at least he faced some kind of justice for unleashing what, at the time, was the most virulent and fast-spreading internet worm in internet history. This was something that happened quite some time ago, but I think it was about 2003 or 2004, back when all those random online chat rooms were really popular. During my junior year, I was looking for some part-time work that I could maybe do remotely. I didn't have a car at the time and was working part-time at a fast food place near my home, so I could just walk there. But I wanted to make some more money so I could save up and get my own car. I started looking in the best and worst place possible, which was Craigslist. I found an ad asking for help on a chat room style site. They needed help with moderators to watch the chat, making sure that it stayed appropriate and the such. After looking over the site, it appeared to be made for children. It was very bright and colorful, and the About Us section explained how it was supposed to be a place that kids can go to talk to other kids their age, to get help with homework, and just to have fun. They had small games in different rooms that you could play based on that subject, or you could just use the chat room feature. I didn't get to actually see much of the site beyond the About Us, because you had to sign up with, quote, parental consent. It had a whole section you had to fill out for your child, and then your contact information, which I thought was pretty cool. Parents had to be in the loop about what they were doing on here, and that made me feel good about the site and the people behind it. Of course, I know there's always the possibility that people lie, but we'll get into that a little later. Anyways, I contacted them about the position, and they were quick to bring me on. They needed someone to monitor during the evenings and nights, and that worked out perfectly for me. They sent me my login credentials, which I had to activate, and then I accessed the actual site using an admin code. Once I was in there, I realized that this was actually a pretty nice setup. It was directed for kids between the ages of 6 and 12. There were a few different worlds there, such as Science Land, Art Studio, and Math Mountain. Each one was dedicated to their own subject, and there were, as it was explained to me, 2 to 3 licensed tutors in there helping the kids. Then, we had our normal mods, such as myself, that would keep an eye on the chats. To be honest, it was an easy job. The pay wasn't great, but I could literally do it from my room while I did my own homework, so I couldn't complain. Plus, I loved working with kids and helping others learn, so it really was a win-win for me. Another safety measure I saw was that there was no private messaging between users, so kids couldn't do direct messaging. The mods and tutors had their own chat and could DM each other, including the users and kids' accounts, but it was supposed to be used for automated messages, such as telling a kid not to do something, giving them a warning for behavior type of deal. Otherwise, everything else just stayed in the public chats. So the place seemed pretty safe considering what we were dealing with, and the mods and tutors all seemed to get along and work together effortlessly. They immediately welcomed me to the team, and it just felt like a good place to be. The first few months went about how you would expect them to. Kids asking for homework help and complaining about said subject, sharing nonsensical jokes and posting drawings of their pets. Typical wholesome kid stuff. The biggest issues I dealt with in that time were a kid or two trying to share their real name, and one fight that I had to break up and send out warnings for arguing about which Pokemon was the strongest. Like I said, not that hard of a job. I also worked later, so the site was pretty dead after 10 p.m. There were maybe a handful of kids online at that time, Maybe some up later on the weekend or some international users, which we also did get. But one of those nights, I started noticing a moderator that was there just about every evening. It may not seem odd at first, seeing how I did it just about every night too, but even I took some nights off. But when I would come back, I would see him online with the counter of active hours. They had this counter to also limit kids and make sure they weren't on for several hours at a time, forcing them to take breaks too. His name was Mr. Helper, and he seemed to stick around the art studio. It wasn't really my place to say anything, so I just shrugged it off as maybe this was their only job, and they were trying to get as much as they could. Maybe the mods would limit his hours eventually. So I found myself in the same chats as him on occasion, and would see some of the conversations he had. At first they seemed supportive and helpful, complimenting the kids on their artwork and offering helpful suggestions. But then he started prying a little more than I liked. I saw him ask a few times if they were a boy or a girl by phrasing his comment as, "You're a pretty creative girl/boy." And they were kids, so they were quick to correct him if he got it wrong. He did similar things when it came to asking their age and where they lived. I knew this was not okay, as we prohibited kids from even asking each other that. So I sent a DM to Mr. Helper telling him to stop with the personal questions because it wasn't appropriate. He was quick to apologize and claimed he didn't realize how it looked, and agreed to stop asking, thanking me for pointing it out. I told him no problem, thinking that was it, just someone trying to be friendly and relatable for the kids. For a few days, his chat behavior seemed to improve too. Nothing weird or prying. Back to just talking about the subject matters and questions about work. I felt good that it really was just an innocent mistake, but then I went through the automated reports from our flagging system. We get a log for the previous day that has words and phrases that flag our system, such as inappropriate words, sensitive information, such as names, states, or even apparent street names. It flags them all and we get a report of it to review it to see if any warnings or kicks need to be made. The thing is, I typically didn't work until 1 or 2 in the morning, so I never saw it. But it was a Saturday night, and I had nothing better to do. So I decided to get some easy hours and work late that night. The report came in a little after 1 a.m., and since no one else had said they would grab it, I decided to do so. I started going over the logs when I came across a lot of flags in a single conversation, and that was a private conversation between one of the kids and this Mr. Helper. He'd been using his mod privileges to send DMs asking for personal information. He was asking their names, where they lived under the guise of sending them art supplies. I was livid. Even if it was innocent, which I was no longer thinking, he knew damn well that this was wrong. I reported it to one of the admins there immediately, and thankfully they agreed that that wasn't allowed. And with my previous warning, he needed to go. They sent a message telling him this, informed all of us in the mod chat that he was kicked and fired, and that was that. I was proud. I reviewed it, caught what he was doing, and they actually took actions. But the good feelings didn't last long. 2 days after he was kicked, a new user account came in. Keep in mind, this is a user account, as in it's supposed to be a child. Their name was Study Buddy, and at first, they didn't say much beyond the normal greetings and asking someone to work in a specific room with them. But shortly after, this new person would start asking more personal questions. They would say, "I'm Tommy, what's your name?" And one of us would stop them, informing them that we don't share that kind of information. They would stop and then go right back into it. This went on for some time, where they would stop and then start again, and they clearly were not getting it. So eventually they would get kicked too. I caught on pretty quickly. It was awfully convenient that we got rid of Mr. Helper, and now we get new users trying to do the same thing. I had no way to prove it, but I was pretty confident that it was the same guy. I just kept reporting them and got them kicked one after another like some weird game of whack-a-mole. Finally, it seemed to stop, so I could let up some. And then we got a new mod that, to be honest, seemed like they tried too hard. I thought maybe that was just me being an ass as a teenager, but they quickly solidified it for me. Their name was Cool Teacher, and immediately they were joking around and getting the kids all excited. Normally this would be fine, but he would get them going on random topics, and they would get way too animated about it, spamming emojis, all caps, the works. So we would have to bring them all back down. So really, this guy just seemed like he was trying to get the kids to like him more, which was weird. This person was an adult, or at least 16 or older, trying to get the approval of the kids, which to me never ends well, so I was already watching this guy closer. It wasn't long after he started, maybe 2 weeks or so, and I found myself once again going through the flagged reports. I was still getting weird vibes from the guy, so I wanted to check his messages. And would you look at that? His messages were flagged multiple times. This time, it was a bit more alarming. He had asked 2 girls in one day for their names and addresses, doing the exact same thing. I couldn't prove it was the first guy, Mr. Helper, but with the messages being almost identical, it was pretty obvious. I was livid. How could he seriously be trying it again, knowing this was how we caught him the first time? And why the hell was I the only one seeming to bring this up? The first girl that he talked to didn't give her address, saying that she didn't know it. So he was prying and asking what state and what was the name of her school. The other girl did give a partial address. The other mods should have caught this prior to me. I know there wasn't much in terms of a background check or anything. They did ask me if I was a convicted felon and for PayPal details for the payment, and that was it. This was quite some time ago, but I can admit that there definitely should have been better checks. So it was possible this guy just applied and gave new payment information. So I once again reported this and told them that we probably needed to report it to the authorities because of the information the kids shared, and they seemed disinterested. They once again kicked the guy, but never mentioned that they would do anything further. Hell, I was still considered a kid myself, still in high school, and I had young siblings. I would think any parent would want to know, so I still had the flags downloaded, and not knowing how to really report it, I told my parents about it. They knew that I was a mod for the site, but they didn't really know much else. I should have told them more, but I don't blame them at all. They said I was doing the right thing, but also requested that I quit helping, explaining how it could look bad. I agreed. I stopped working with them after that night, and we looked up the local police stations in the area of those little girls, and reported to them the potential predators. I don't know what happened after that, though. I pray that those girls lived outside of that guy's area so he didn't try anything. Or, if he did, hopefully the police were scanning the area and caught the guy before he could. I know I checked out the site a few years later, and it had actually been shut down. It just sat there with a page about thanks for learning with us, and that was it. No indication that it was moved elsewhere, and I think that's for the best. A site like that could be beneficial for kids that need help with schoolwork, but it definitely needs a lot more moderation and definitely some background checks. And private messaging should not be allowed whatsoever. But as a parent myself now, and seeing all that as a kid, it's made me restrict them from a lot of things. I may not be able to control others out there, but I can do my best to keep my kids within arm's reach and safe. So that, my friends, was a collection of some scary internet stories. Internet stories. Stories that involve the World Wide Web of horror. Ha ha ha. There you go. Fancy little way to... Anyways. Hopefully, y'all enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do hit that like button. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing. And if you want more content like this, leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the stories, which one you thought was the scariest, and, stuff like that. You can also go to astheravendreams.com, where you can send in your story, find all my links to all my social media pages, find me on other platforms like Spotify, Audible, and all those. It's kind of a be-all, end-all of everything As the Raven Dreams. You can join Patreon and memberships, get early access to content like this and other things, depending on what you sign up for and how you sign up. Yeah. The other thing you could do is be amazing. Oh, done. Awesome. Anyways, friends, hope you all have a great day. Hope I see you again here very soon. But until then, remember that you are loved, you are valid, you are important. The best that you can be, and the world is better with you in it. Until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.